Hi there. Welcome to Hot Off the Presses. I'm Molly Lindsay. I'm here with Jen Chandler of Cabeza Grande Kennels. This is our inaugural episode, first official episode number 1 of Hot Off the Presses, where we discuss all things Presa Canario, which I hope all you folks out there that tuned in to listen today can glean some knowledge off what we're going to talk about. Our subject is structure in the breed standard. Jen is here, obviously, as the expert, and I'm here just to siphon the information, get it all out there, ask the questions that everybody else might want to ask. So, we're going to flip through a series of slides, and Jen's going to kind of highlight the different aspects of the structure of a presa and what the breed dictates. And we'll go through. There's definitely lots of examples. Some of the examples are Jen's dogs for sure. Others are ones that we got off of various sources. And some of them, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, some of them aren't necessarily presses. We're just using them to kind of talk about the actual structure conversation, a good example type of thing. Is
Yeah.
that right?
It was easier to get a
Okay.
different breed than to go in and get
Right.
perfect examples of what I'm talking about because and then you piss people off and this whole thing.
Yeah.
And in some cases
Well, and I'm
I
sure you
did
went
have to
through.
take in some cases I did have to take other people's dogs, but oftentimes they were younger dogs where they showed the fault, but they probably would grow out of it. So to get the perfect
See,
thing, I
that's
did
good.
have to be creative.
So yeah, we'll reiterate that this is just for examples. Some of these pictures are better than others. Some of them, because technology is hard for us, distort a little bit and such like that. And I also want to take this opportunity to say that we'd like everybody to keep in mind that everything we discuss today is our opinions, and they're just based on our experiences. And if you have any questions or concerns about your presses or anything like that, you should definitely consult the breed standard for examples. So I think that we'll go ahead and get started, Jen, if that's okay with you. And
Yep.
you can go ahead and take the floor and start with our first example.
So when we talk about the Presa Canario, it's considered a quote unquote head breed, meaning the head is a very important part of the dog. So a lot of judges, when I'm in the ring, they'll joke about if they look at the standard, it's 8 pages and 7 of them are dedicated to the head. So a lot of this is going to focus on that. There's 3 main components of the head. Its head structure is convergent versus parallel versus divergent head planes. Now, I've written on these pictures to show perfect. One's obviously a Cane Corso. The third one is obviously a Bull Terrier because those perfectly illustrate what I'm talking about. The Presa Canario should parallel planes. So the muzzle, if you place the straight line on the muzzle and a straight line on the head, those lines should go straight out and never touch. You can see with the Cane Corso, if you put a straight line on the top of its head and the top of its nose, those lines would pretty quickly cross each other. That's convergent head planes. And if you go over to the Bull Terrier, you can see on those planes, the line on the head and the line on the muzzle, those lines would continue to diverge from each other. They would go away from each other. So that is, our breed is supposed to be parallel planes. Now, somewhere in the last few years, FCI slipped in slightly convergent allowable. I don't know when it happened. I didn't see it happen. It happened very recently. Um, and I think that is just another example of how the standard changes to fit dogs. And that's unfortunate.
Like
Um,
I
Go
definitely
ahead.
think that the parallel planes give the Presa their look. So if you go away from that, you're going to take their uniqueness and their interest, I think, away, which is a little daunting. Talk to me a little bit about just because I thought of it while you were speaking on it. The head structure has something to do with the bully band, and you say that the standards looking to accept a little bit less parallelism. um, is that kind of a sticky widget because now you're going to get more looking like that bully band head?
I don't
Or am I
know
crazy?
what. Yeah, I don't know what the but the head planes has to do with the bully ban. If you talk about the UK ban, it would be basic. They're defining the dog based on a big blocky head and a specific like height and size. That's a whole other. It technically, if the government followed its own rules, the Presa couldn't fit under that ban because of height alone.
I see. Well, and head structure, something that I read talked about their head structures, and maybe it gets back more into that muzzle ratio conversation we'll have here in a minute. But
yeah,
definitely just curious.
Brachycephalic, maybe brachycephalic breeds, they're under a pretty big attack. Brachycephalic, for just people associate brachycephalic as an unhealthy dog, which a properly bred brachycephalic breed is not any less healthy than the others. And I don't know if we'll have time to talk about that, but our breed has been described as brachycephalic. But if you look at the true definition and true genetic DNA testing, shows that it's absolutely not brachycephalic. It's mesocephalic.
Okay, well, you need to tell me what brachycephalic is and everybody else, because I don't know.
So that's something I didn't prepare slides for. Brachycephalic is those push nose breeds, and if you measure, it takes some measurements of the skull, and then genetically via DNA we can test and see that they're listed as medium to long snouted dogs. At least every one I've ever seen. I've never seen a Presa test embark DNA as a brachycephalic. So it's those flat nose breeds, so it has to have a really short nose. The Corso comes closer to it than the Presa does, and I think in a lot of cases the Corsos aren't even brachycephalic. But there's a lot of negativity towards that.
Are you talking like a Frenchie?
Frenchies, Pekingese, Persian cats, those flat nose things, and they take a lot of heat.
I don't see how the comparison could be made.
The airlines banning them because they think they can't breathe, and in some cases they can't breathe, and it is unfortunate. But there are ways. I mean, open nares is an important part of being healthy and brachycephalic. But that's a conversation we could have separately. Probably go into it for several hours. But in my mind, with all the DNA testing showing that, and just looking at the dog, this is not a brachycephalic breed, and that's something FCI should remove.
Sure.
They should learn from that, because genetic DNA should trump opinion any day.
Sure. That makes sense to me. So, yeah, we'll save those topics for another day, but we can continue moving on with your head situation.
I'm going to go ahead and change it. The next thing is head ratio. So the Presa should be a 60-40 head ratio, skull to muzzle. So if you look at this, if you look at the middle picture, this is a perfect ratio. The head is 100% of what we're talking about. The skull should be 60, the nose should be 40. In the first picture, you can see that the muzzle is too long, too short, sorry. And that's more opposite. So that's probably 40-60 almost. And then the also side note on this, the head is also too rounded. So that's another structure. It should be flat on the head, parallel planes, and a 60-40 ratio. Then you go, I tried to find dogs that fit better than Jenga, because Jenga has a head that everyone seems to love, but her nose was almost 50-50. She didn't quite get there, but she's a good example because her head just looks super long. You make jokes about Jenga that why the long face, because she always has this horse face look to her. So what we're looking for is the middle dog, 60-40 skull muzzle ratio. That's pretty self-explanatory. You can see the one on the left is not great.
Yeah, but Jenga's still got parallel planes at some level, so there is something to work with there when you're talking about like who you breed her with and things of that nature, right?
Yeah, if you measured her, she's probably off by maybe 5%, but it was a dog that I could use that I owned that people would kind of want to see what I'm saying. She has if we're talking, the next thing we're going to talk about, she has a beautiful stop too. And then if you look at the dog on the left, you can see it has too severe a stop, but I do have slides for the next one that might define that better for people.
Let's go ahead. I'll flip it there. That's what
we're talking about. When we talk about
stop's a funny word.
Yeah, it is called stop though. The point where the head stops and moves down onto the muzzle area, that's considered the stop. And you can see in this dog, it's very abrupt. And in the picture before, sorry, I hit it twice. This first dog, you can see it's a very abrupt stop, just like this other one. This one has too much stop. And you see the correct one, it should be a very minimal, gradual stop. It should be defined. You should be able to see it. But if you took a set of skis and ran down her head, that would be a comfortable transition. The other dog, you would fall off and hurt yourself maybe. And then the last dog doesn't have enough stop. And this is an example of a young dog I used. It's not a dog I own. So hopefully the owner doesn't recognize. I messed up the picture to hopefully not have it be identified. But this is a young dog. She's probably going to grow up. Once the head expands, she'll look fine. But it illustrates how flat her stop is, and which is not correct.
Right.
So the middle dog is a perfect gradual stop. And Jenga has that perfect gradual stop as well. So her head is really nice. So I love that dog.
Who is the middle? Who is the middle?
Laria.
Oh, gotcha. That looked familiar. Okay. So then we're going to talk about flus, which is a new word to me when I was preparing for this conversation. I hadn't heard that word before. So if you want to tell everybody what that means and then talk about it.
The first picture is a dog that had just run many miles, and I got this picture of him because the head was nice. It's a distorted picture, so it makes his head look kind of more blocky than it is. But you can see it pretty perfectly illustrates how the flus drop down more than we would like for them. They should be a big, bulky-headed Molliser type dog, but they shouldn't be so hangy that there's always drool drilling up. And when he's not tired, it's not quite as bad. The next picture is a nice female. She's also hot, but you can see she has flus, but not an excessive amount of flus. So the flu is the lip, the bottom lip where it hangs down. I've circled it on the first dog. The last dog, you can see she has very little flus. They should have some, but not an excessive amount. It's not a typical Mastiff where they should be drooling excessively. Males drool more than females, and they drool more when they're involved in eating, drinking, or activity. But it should not be a breed. Stop it. It shouldn't be a breed that, sorry, my dog is in the camera. It shouldn't be a breed that just sits there and drools all the time. It's not a dog de Bordeaux or a Neo. And that's part of their charm.
So is there any function of that? Like anything better about, like, some of the things about them are for purposes. Does the flu have any purpose?
So the negative to it is excessive flus. They get caught when they're biting, gripping stuff. They get caught in teeth, get bit. Everything extra skin is related to not being able to be grabbed. Like the excessive skin around the neck, that's just for protection from like predators or something from grabbing their necks. It protects gives them an extra layer of protection.
Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. Dope. We'll move on to their bite, which is a big part of a Presa.
Yeah, definitely. So the second picture shows obviously the correct construction of the dog. So there are two acceptable bites in the breed: reverse scissors, which, as you can see, is in the first illustration, the first set of teeth. You can see that the bottom jaw is actually out farther than the top jaw, but they're still touching. That's reverse scissors. They accept that, but not preferred. Scissors, obviously, the top jaw is over the bottom, but they're still touching. So no room between the teeth. That's scissors. That's what we prefer. Level is one of the worst bites. That's not effective. It's not functional. When they grip something, just try to think about when you grab something with just the front of your teeth. They couldn't hold on as well. The other two things, which I could not find a drawing like this for, and I tried to find pictures of it, but they just were hard to show people. The underbite is like the first picture, but an extreme example where the bottom jaw, the bottom teeth and top teeth don't touch. So an underbite, you could put your fingers in there, or it could be up to a quarter of an inch in separation. Overbite, same thing. So instead of the top would be over the bottom, but they wouldn't be touching. So none of those are acceptable. The only two acceptable bites are reverse scissors and scissors. Scissors being preferred because that's the most functional a bite of any canine. Actually, when you see the bulldogs, the people say, well, the preferred bite is an underbite. I mean, okay. That's not a functional bite. An underbite will never be a functional bite. An overbite will never be a functional bite. Level will never be a functional bite.
Well, the reverse scissors even seems like any theory on why they accept that? It just
That
happened. Is it
also,
prevalent? Is it natural?
it's prevalent. It's natural. I think that was a recent change. I don't think the 89 standard includes a reverse scissors bite. I think that was something that was added when you get these shorter muzzle dogs, like when they slipped in the convergent planes. Shorter muzzle will always mean more prone to a underbite or a reverse scissors. So I think it's at least good for us that they didn't say an underbite was good, was accepted. At least the teeth have to be. At least the teeth have to be touching, and that's still functional. An underbite can be functional from a bite standpoint, but not as functional as these two. And if you get
Well,
too
and
far,
I know from our experience, we had an overbite that corrected itself for the most part too. By the time
I've had several overbites, and they've all but one have corrected. Literally, like
right.
I saw the dog and I wanted to scrap it. It was such a nice puppy, your puppy. I wanted to scrap her. I told you when I looked at her and everybody saw her in line. It's like, this is the best puppy I've seen. And then I looked at her. I was like, oh nope, parrot mouth. But she corrected, so I don't know. But from a growth standpoint, the bottom jaw on a canine grows for a longer period of time than the top. So a puppy having an overbite is way better than a puppy having an underbite. And from a genetic standpoint, what I learned fairly recently is that it is possible for dogs to inherit top jaw and bottom jaw from different parents. So if you have this blocky-headed male who's just a little more blocky than you wanted, so hey, let's fix it with a more longer nose correct female, you could screw yourself. Because you get the one jaw from one parent, the other jaw from the other parent, and now you've ruined the body.
Now you got this like underdrawn thing coming at you.
Right.
Nice. Well, that's all interesting. I like that. So let's go to cubed heads.
Cubed head, yeah. So when you look at the
Presa head,
yeah, when you look at the Presa, you should look at it and see two cubes, the back cube and then the front cube. Like they put the muzzle cube right on the front of the other one. I used this dog on the left. He's got a fine head. His muzzle is not too big, but because all of the examples I found online of this was from one specific breeder who would know his dogs, and I really didn't want that drama. But it does kind of illustrate how his muzzle is a bigger part of the head than the other dogs. The muzzle cube too slight, that's obvious. She has a little tiny pointed nose, and her head overall is not big enough. In an ideal world, I would have found a big-headed dog like the one in the middle with a little tiny pointed nozzle, but I just didn't find that. So the illustration, I had to make the illustration fit as best I could. But you can see that the female in the middle, she's only 13 months old, so she's got some filling out to do. It's a perfect little percentage of cube. So they shouldn't be pointy nosed. They shouldn't be pointy nosed. They shouldn't be flat faced. Shouldn't cover up the whole front of the dog with muzzle. And
so
interesting.
You figured the one on the right will grow out of that, or you think that's a grown dog?
The one on the right, she's a 14-year-old adult dog. In this picture, she was probably 3, so that's a grown dog.
Oh, interesting. Did she grow out of it? No.
She did not. No, she was always bad.
No.
Hey, I don't care what anybody. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care if you've been breeding 100 years. And this dog, like I said, she's old. This one, 13, 14-year-old dog.
Right.
Still to this day, I produce faults. If anybody tells you that they don't produce faults, they're lying, or they don't know what a fault is. It's genetics. These are not little machines.
And that's part of why I want to have this conversation is that, people want to judge these dogs and judge breeders and such like that. And it just simply comes down to nature and science and trying to be cognitive of what you have and what you're doing. But you're going to have things like you say that don't, just like the jaw situation, if it comes from the mom and the dad and it goes the opposite way, it just doesn't come out
Right.
the way you thought,
Yeah. This
makes
is
a good
all.
pet.
This is all a game of improvement. So there are no perfect dogs. So you have to look at your dog. What faults does this dog have? What can this other dog do to help those faults? It's as easy as simple as that.
Sure.
We're all just chasing the perfect combination. If someone says they have perfect dogs, they're lying or don't know the difference. I would never say I have perfect dogs. I think these dogs that I have now in the last 5 or 6 years are certainly better than anything I've produced before, but that's the point. If it wasn't, I should stop.
Sure. Sure. And I mean, that's what I think people need to understand too, is that your goal is just to preserve the breed, make the best, healthiest examples of the breed, which I'm sure we will beat into everything that we do, just to help people, understand the angle that you're coming from. But that's it. It's why do you're trying to perfect your situation, but as you clearly admit, it's never going to be a perfect situation.
No.
But you just
If
do the
someone
best you
says,
can with what you're.
like it makes me giggle when you hear somebody say, "Oh, your dog's out of standard." Well, if you look at the standard as a perfect document, which it isn't a perfect document, but if you looked at it as a perfect document describing every dog, we are all as breeders literally just breeding substandard, out of standard dogs. It's just how much. Because unless we have the perfect dog that fits
Right.
every single piece of that standard, they're all out of standard. So when someone says, "Hey, your dog doesn't have a mask," it's out of standard. Okay, your dog's 170 pounds. It's out of standard. Oh, that's different. Or
Right.
your dog has a straight rear. That's out of standard. Oh, that's different. People can see color and it's something they can grasp. It's tangible. Hey, I see this color. This is out of standard, but they don't see the entirety of the other parts of the dog that show that's out of standard too. We're just trying to correct this stuff. So I will use a structurally correct dog with a color fault over something that's not. Stop.
Do you think you have who's your nearest perfect that you've had?
Oh, good Lord.
Would you be able to judge?
I mean, Jenga's pretty perfect. Wicket's pretty perfect. I have a lot of really nice females. I could keep going, but even when I say perfect, it makes me recoil because wow, this bitch thinks she has perfect dogs. I do not, but I have dogs that if I could take this part of, if I could take Jenga's head off and throw it on every dog, I would do that. That dog that I just posted recently. Have you met my dad? The female, dark brindle. That dog's pretty close to perfection in my eyes.
Yeah.
She's tall.
Well, and that's just, you're just trying to make the best examples that you can. I get that totally. In the closer to the standard as you can get, and preserving those traits, those strong traits that are what desirable in the breed. Let's move on to another part of the precedent.
I need to put these dogs up.
Yes, okay, everyone realizes, I'm sure, that we have dogs around us. So please pardon our interruptions. They don't understand what we're doing today.
Yeah. I have that royal.
So talk to me about body length.
So the dog on the right is a perfect example of length of body. The body should be longer than the dog is tall. So this this dog, there's no other dog I could find that illustrates the perfect longer body. He was nice. His angulation is beautiful, front and back. He's a pretty perfect dog. But you can see the fawn dog on the right, who also he's to the side. His body is fine as far as length, but since he's turned to the side, he looks more boxy. And again, I wanted to use my own dogs rather than try to find somebody else's dogs. But he's pretty square. You see how it's a square-looking frame versus the longer body. That's pretty self-explanatory. The dog is supposed to be long, especially females. Females should be always longer-bodied than they are tall. I mean,
we have the two boys who are shorter, a little bit shorter than in the carriage than the rest of ours. And that's true. The girls are all a bit longer. Never noticed that before.
Yeah. From a functional standpoint, a square dog is more preferred. So front angulation, you can go on. Was this is a side note. Front angulation, dog on the left is obviously very straight. I wish I could have found this specific dog and exactly this from the side, because this dog is one of the worst dogs out there for a front. But I couldn't find the photos from the side on the dog. Maybe by design, the breeder might know this. The second dog, this dog was a heavy dog, and he was never a very fit looking dog. But if you took 10 pounds off him and tried to get him look fit, he just looked emaciated. But he had amazing front and rear angulation. You can see the chest should go out and the legs should be slightly behind the floor chest. And what that does is, if you think of, rather than having two front sticks that hit the ground straight, that causes shoulder damage every time, shoulder elbow damage every time it hits, you have a more absorbing front construction. So when they run, they can absorb, and the shoulder should be springy. And I think this picture pretty much illustrates what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I get that one for sure. It's the best. I never really understood it till literally I made this slide, and I thought, oh, okay, I see it there now. And then I went out that day and looked at all of my dogs.
I was shy on it. I mean, I was not that knowledgeable, but I knew the importance of it. But for me to explain it to somebody, that's something I only really recently could have done. So shoulder angulation escaped me for a lot of years too.
Can you see it though? As soon as you see a dog, can you say, "Oh, that's
if you have a stacked, if the dog is in my presence, I can see it. If you have a stacked picture like this, you can see it. If it's really horrific, like the dog on the left, it's very obvious."
I see. Yeah, because I still was looking at mine a little bit like, okay, well, I'm not sure, but I think ours are all good.
Yeah, that was the last. It was the last structure trait I really learned. So this is something that really front leg ratio from the shoulder to the elbow to the foot should be exactly the same height. The dog in the middle. Now these pictures, especially the one in the middle, are a little distorted when they uploaded them, a little weird. But you can see that from the shoulder to the elbow to the foot is the exact same height. The dog on the left, that's pretty obvious how she has almost no. The upper arm is super short. So
you're saying like the elbow is coming right out of its body.
Yeah, if you could measure from her shoulder to her elbow and then her elbow to the ground, the shoulder to the elbow would be a shorter number. There were way worse examples I found online, but I was afraid people would recognize their dogs, and I really was not trying to piss people off with it.
Sure. Our intentions are good.
Yeah, my intentions are good. I literally tried to use all dogs of my own, and even when we're talking bad about these dogs, my dogs, other people's dogs, in no case am I saying, hey, don't breed these dogs. It's just that look at them, see their faults, and try to correct them. Because we're not at the point where we can be throwing good dogs out with the bathwater, whatever the heck the saying is. We have to use, sometimes if they have traits that we can use. Back to the other, so front angulation is one of the worst problems in the breed. So that's something we need to start focusing more on. So back to this topic. The dog on the right is young. He did end up being like a 31-inch dog, still way too tall. But in this photo, he's not filled out, so he doesn't look great. He's on an angle on my driveway. So you could see from the elbow to the shoulder is well longer than the elbow to the foot. And that's a product of him being a way too tall a dog.
Right. And so that's one of yours because I recognize your house in the background, correct?
Yep. All of these, every one of them. Well, the one on the left is not my dog, but is a dog I had here.
So the one on the right, did you breed that dog?
The black dog?
Yeah.
8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then when you breed that dog, what are you breeding it to counter that?
So he did fill out. I have better pictures of him. So when the chest filled out and went forward and the hocks filled out and he's on a level ground, he's a much better looking dog. So what I bred him to, is since he was too tall, I did not breed him to a too short dog, which is a common mistake people make. They say, hey, breed too tall to do too short and you'll have medium dogs. Well, genes don't meld like that at all. None of them do. So anytime you have a dog with a fault, if this dog is too tall, you breed it to a correct heighted bitch. That's how you fix it. And then in that litter, you'll have dogs that are too tall because of him, and you'll have some that are correct. And the mistake we make thinking that these genes meld to fix things is that if we breed a too tall to a too short, then on paper, all you have is too tall and too short puppies. You haven't fixed anything. Right. So that's
Which
something
would be an interesting looking litter.
Well, that's one of the most common mistakes that people think, well, if the muzzle's too short, I will breed it to a dog that's too long. No, we don't do that. We have to breed any trait that you have that's faulted. You have to breed to the other dog has to have correct. It just needs to be correct. So you breed a short muzzle to a correct muzzle. You breed all these other traits. If your stop is too strong, you breed. Hey, no!
The house.
Can you bring that dog in? Yeah, Jengosaurus is super reactive, so they're nice. I love hubris.
So let me ask you this:
Go ahead.
Which is there a way to kind of rank what the important structure items are when you consider breeding? Do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah. So angulation is angulation in all parts on the inside of the frame of the dog are the most important things. So having a healthy rear, and we haven't talked about that yet, having a healthy front, those are the two most important things. And then when you talk about, we also haven't talked about this yet, where the limbs are on the outside of the body, that's a super uncomfortable thing. And then there are lesser things, easty, westy, feet, cowhock, those are kind of lesser things that not too much to worry about. We just pay attention to them. From a functional or a pain or a longevity standpoint, those are two things that are not bothering the dog too much.
What's an example of if it has this specific trait, I'm not going to breed it? It becomes
straight rear.
Eligible.
The straight rear or bowed front legs.
Okay, gotcha. And that's more for the safety of the dogs, right? They need to have those good functioning areas because that's what they walk around on all the time, right?
Yeah. Okay. We did it a little bit out of order, but we're going to go ahead and do this. So chest should be full and wide. The forechest should be out. The chest should extend about to the elbows. The dog on the left has a cathedral chest, which if you think of the church with the cathedral ceiling, it goes up. This is the same dog as with the boxy, the same bad example that I used for the cubed head. She was a mess all over the place. Middle dog has a nice broad chest, but you can see his limbs are still fully inside the frame of the body. They're not on the outside. So his chest is really nice, and of course the one on the outside is, you can see the legs. You can see the legs are Jen's dogs don't have no temperament. You better stop them, come beat your ass. The legs are on the outside of the body. That's super painful for the dog. Think of all these bullies. Every time this dog on the right runs and his limbs hit the ground, the shoulders are feeling every single bit of that pressure up. It's just bashing on the shoulders. It's super painful. So the chest is too wide. He also has a really good easty westy feet description, but I suspect what some of these do, especially in Europe, and I don't know I'm not going to say where this dog is from. I don't know that I even remember. When they're stacking a dog, they will pull the legs out. So it may be a case of this dog's legs are fine, but this breeder just...
Well, this picture was a little bit distorted too, but I know we used it just to make the nice example of what we're actually addressing, which it does well.
It was a good example. It was a good example of definitely wide. You can see the limbs are on the outside of the body. Rear angulation. Go back. There you go. This is something. I mean, front angulation is not as easy to see when it's bad. rear angulation, you can see it pretty good. Now, when you see the first one, you can see
Yeah.
this is actually on the AKC website as the perfect example. I don't know whose dog it is, so I must apologize if you do, if you recognize it. I don't know if people watch enough of this, but you can see bolt straight, no angulation. That's not a dog I would breed at all. If I could swap these two photos, now that I'm looking at them, the middle one almost illustrates too much angulation, but if you had stacked him correct, like the third picture, he would have nice angulation. This is the dog with the too short a muzzle from the beginning, so that you see that if I could take the head of a different dog off and put it on this dog's body is beautiful, almost perfect
Hi,
body.
Dave. Gotcha. So does the muscle come into factor anywhere? Because
Does
you've
the
mentioned it on the last slide.
muzzle or muscle? Oh yeah, so
Muscles.
they shouldn't be. You can also see on the first one, but this might be a product of the fact that the legs are so straight that his muscles are just atrophied. You can see these dogs should have a deep, wide thigh muscle, and that's something that lacks the breed too. They have nice angulation, but they'll have little skinny thighs.
Yeah, I got some rumps on my presses. I don't know about everybody else. But
Yeah, so do I. Big butts. You see them from the rear. They're crazy. I mean,
we
I have
like
some
big
little ones.
butts here at Press the World.
So that
So then
um,
top line, let's talk about that.
yeah, so I went ahead and used the black young dog on see he was aimed uphill, so but it shows that he's a flat straight top line, almost a leaning down top line in this picture. So that kind of illustrates what we don't want. Me personally, I prefer a level top line over the slopey one. The standard says slightly ascending to the croup. The croup is the rump, the rear of the dog, so the withers should be slightly lower than the rump. The croup. So that's 1 to 2 centimeters. If you look at the traditional dog that's winning in Spain, those dogs are not slightly ascending, they're overly ascending, and that's the problem with some standards and some judges. The judges see a lot of dogs that are very similar in that their asses are all really high, then they'll start to judge that way as being correct. And that's very
So you're
very
saying, though, let me reiterate, you're saying your preference would be that the level top line was the standard, but what's in the center is what actually is?
Yes. From a functional standpoint, from long-term running, health of the dog, a long body is less functional, and a ascending croup is less functional. We're one of the few breeds that specifically lists ascending top line. But again, in the first thing the standard says about top line is the top line should be straight. And that a lot of judges end there. They don't even read longer. But if you read the second part of it, it says slightly ascending to the group 1 to 2 centimeters. So what they're trying to say is where I've in the middle dog where I put a straight line, it's to reiterate that yes, this rump is slightly higher, but is still straight. So if you had a big dip like a sway back horse, the picture on the right.
That's what I always think of.
Yeah, that's even though if you could measure the third dog, his rump is too high for what the standard says, but not grossly. But the fact that the top line dips is where the problem comes in. It's an
Is this a
unhealthy.
factor? How high up on the scale of factors for breeding is a bad top line?
This one's pretty bad. Oh, are you asking me
So
how
you probably would
important?
have bred that one.
Are you asking how important top line is overall, or this dog?
Overall,
Oh, overall, top line's pretty important. It has to hold up
right?
all
Back
of
to
the
like the
muscles.
rear structures and stuff.
Yeah, it's up there with angulation and all limbs on the inside of the body.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Their tails, their deadly tails.
Yeah, some people will describe the entire breed based on the tail, and if it doesn't have the right tail, they say it's not the breed, which is ridiculous. This breed this young, you can't define by a single trait or a single set of traits, but let's talk about it. Tail set should be a healthy tail set, and luckily our standard is on track with the health. If you ran your hand down the spine, the tail should just move right off the spine. It should be just extension of the spine. It should not go down the body, and it should not end to where the tail goes up. So the tail set on the first dog, you can see her hind end goes down and then the tail comes out. She was never a dog that she was happy and she was confident, but she was never a dog that would hold her tail up because her tail was also too long. So this is the best picture, but you can see where it goes down and then it comes out. So I think it makes the point. And the next picture, you can see it's just smoothly off the back of the dog and no transition really. And then next one is obvious. It's a pretty typical fault. It's not horrible. The last one shows that the tail comes straight out of the body, straight up and out of the body. A correct tail set wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, I think those pictures are all pretty self-explanatory. That makes complete sense. I would have never noticed it otherwise.
I mean, I like to see the tail up and over the body, but it has to come out right too. The thickness. I mean, there are people who say rat tail means not a Presa. Again, anybody defining the breed by single traits is just ridiculous. You can see this is thin rat tail. We call that. And just the next one is correct. She's both correct in her set. You see that she is at full attention. She's actually paying attention to something that's very interesting to her. So if her tail set was too high, her tail would be the same as that too high tail set. It would be straight up the back and then over. It would be that same thing, but you can see it's not. But it shows the correct thickness. Should be very thick at the base and then slightly taper to the end. The next one is also a correct tail set, beautiful tail set. And I think that this is more of a fuzzy tail. I think your tail is probably fine, but it makes the way it's set, it makes it look really super thick. So you don't want a super bat tail. That's just not what the breed is, but you do need a thick, substantial tail. When it hits you after they've shaken, you want to know you had a welt.
Yeah, I know it. Feeling. Or they knock over everything on your table or whatever it is.
Yeah. Carriage is kind of obvious. I wish I could find some better examples of the curly tail one, but they were all obviously people's dogs. And again, I wasn't trying to mess people up. Frankenstein is on the left. Her tail would go up, curl around, and the tip faced behind her at full attention. She had a good tail set. The spine and connection was healthy, but she just had a curly tail. Egret is on the right. She has a perfect tail held. It doesn't look as long as it should be because it's bent off to the away from the camera, but it's a proper tail. You can see how it's supposed to. They're described as up at like a saber at attention, so it should look like a bent saber sword.
So tail, I would assume, is kind of further down in the breeding requirements.
Yeah, you want to make sure the spine tail. You want to make sure the spine tail connection is healthy because that's an extension of the spine. But as far as thickness and the way it's held, we really
not quite as
we have bigger fish to fry for sure.
Nice.
So
we're coming to the end. We've got a couple other subjects.
Yeah. So this is a puppy. So whether this dog, the one on the left is a puppy, whether he grew out of it, I don't know. You can see the limbs are bent. Underneath the chest, you can see the front limbs are bent. The front feet are also easty-westy. So the one on the left is, I think it was an early spayed dog. This isn't mine, but it's a friend of mine's. You can see the feet kind of toe out, and that's called easty-westy. Not her.
What does spay have to do with it? Anything?
Oh, so if you spay early, the secondary growth hormones that hit around 12, 15, 18 months, they tell the long bones when to stop growing. So if you spay early, that never happens. So the dog keeps growing longer than it should. An early spay won't get its full bone development. It was prone to bone cancer. The chest will never fully drop.
Theoretically, the dog on the left, although it can't, because it's been spayed, it can't be bred anymore. The issues that it's showing that aren't correct are not genetic. It wouldn't have necessarily developed those
The
things.
dog. So I'm talking. The dog on the right is the one that I think was early spayed.
Oh,
The one on the left is
okay.
a puppy. Those both
I got you. That makes
legs.
more sense. Okay.
Yeah. So you can see she's long and
Gotcha.
lean. Her bones will never fully develop.
Yeah.
They should. The
Yeah.
head will never pop. Early alteration is
Well, and
horrific for
spay is
dogs.
something that spays are something we can talk about another day too, because I know there's lots of people's opinions on things like that. So good topic for another time.
So bowed limbs are pretty bad
then,
issue. Easty Westie's not too horrific, although we want to try to breed away from it. Narrow chest. You can see this is an adult dog. She doesn't have any chest development, so we wouldn't breed anything like that. It's too bad. And the dog on the right is cowhocked. In some circles, like bulldog and weight pull circles, they prefer cowhock dogs because they believe it brings power to the rear. For me, of all the structural issue, cowhock is way down on the list. So let's fix it. But it's one of the easier ones to correct with a breeding or two. It's lesser on the scale of causing the dog overall pain. So we watch it and we correct it. But it doesn't end our lives. The angulation, the top line, the
kind of like having duck feet, right?
I don't know what duck feet. I have perfect feet, so I wouldn't know. Literally the only
do. I have duck feet. They look like that.
Yeah, so that's kind of
nice. So that's all of our presentation today of the slides that we have. And there are some other things, obviously, about the standard that we didn't talk about, like face masks or colors in general. And there's different things out there that do talk to the breed standard, but we wanted to basically get into the structure and the things that really keep the dog healthy and comfortable and performing well. So I think we did a great job. I definitely know more than I did. And when I prepared this slideshow, I learned a lot. So I'm hoping everybody else out there did too. Is there anything else you want to wrap up about structure or how we breed or any of those elements that we kind of talked about being important or anything like that?
It's just really important to be honest with yourself as a breeder about what the faults on your dog are and just do your best to fix them with the dog that has the correct thing. Nobody should be bashing somebody for breeding a faulted dog if it's still a healthy dog, a health tested dog, and a good example of the standard. Everybody's producing faults. If they say they're not, avoid them. Just do what you can to identify the faults in your own dogs. That's important. That's part of not being kennel blind. What's the fault of this dog? What's the strength of this dog? And then get a mate that fixes those, and either your dog maybe fixes something on that dog.
You've got mail.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Oh,
just be honest. Just be honest.
You always do.
Be honest with yourself. That's the whole thing. We're all breeding to do the best we can.
Well, and I guess some people, consideration too is, what are you doing with your dogs? Are you raising working dogs? Are you raising, protection pets? Or, what is the function? And I'm sure that's a factor too. I would assume temperaments, all that stuff.
Yeah. Temperament can be a whole nother episode, but I mean, even if you're breeding dogs just to be pets, and let's be realistic, most of the people in the world can only handle a pet version of this breed. So we do have to be honest with ourselves about that as well. If you don't sell these hot puppies to the wrong home. But even if you're breeding just for pets, if you can make the best possible healthy structure and good hips, and that goes along with it.
Yeah, because hip surgeries are expensive. Nobody wants to have to do that for their dog. So breeding the correct and healthy and structurally sound dogs is the right thing to do.
Yeah, no matter whether working or what. In this breed, a lot of times the working, strictly quote unquote working lines, which we can talk about that in another episode too. I don't even entertain that nonsense. But strictly supposed working lines have really dropped the ball from a structural standpoint, because a lot of those dogs are, hey, breed anything that works, or have shitty rears.
Yeah.
No, they didn't pay
Right.
attention to
Breeding to
all the right
temperament
stuff.
versus,
Yeah,
breeding to temperament versus structure or function.
it's equally
Not
bad
good.
to have a dog that wants to and can't than to have a dog that can and doesn't want to. Those things are equally bad to me.
Makes sense to me too. Well, listen, I appreciate you dropping your knowledge on us for sure. I learn every time I talk to you, I have to say. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up and let everybody know that our next episode will be 2 weeks from tonight. And it will be discussing getting and caring for your Presa puppy, even maybe an older dog, whatever you happen to adopt. And we'll get into some of those details. If anybody's got anything specific they'd like to ask us ahead of time about those topics, go ahead and throw them in our comments on our social media pages, or anything for future topics that somebody wants to talk about. And keep an ear out. Hopefully one of these days soon, Jen and I can go live and kind of just do a current events topic that everybody might want to talk about. And if anybody's got ideas for those, we'd love to have those too. We'd be more than happy to get on here and talk about, anything people need help with, anything that they think is positive for the breed going forward, and anything that'll help advance their health and their well-being. So anything else you'd like to add tonight, Jen?
No, I'm pretty good. Thanks for
Okay,
everybody.
well, thanks a lot.
Thanks everybody for listening and starting this journey with us. I hope, as with any podcast that I've watched from the beginning, that this will get better and we'll get more comfortable and better at it and all these things. So bear with us when I'm a little fumfering around.
Makes it look natural.
Awkward.
Yeah. All right. Well, for Hot Off the Presses, I'm Molly. And again, thanks, Jen. Catch us in a couple weeks, and please let us know any of your feedback. Everybody have a great time and stay warm.
Yep. See ya.